This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Well, some interesting results out of Hong Kong, local elections there, and
they did it.
The freedom fighters routed the Beijing stooges, 71% turnout, and more than 200 seats won by pro-democracy candidates compared to about 30 for those representing a pro-Beijing party. What does that mean? What does that mean for the state of play between President Xi and Hong Kongans against the backdrop of a trade deal? President Trump wants to get done with President Xi against the backdrop of the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act that passed the House and Senate and is waiting the president's signature. For answers to those questions and more, we're pleased to be joined by Lieutenant Colonel James Carafano. You can call him Jim. Vice President of the Catherine and Shelby Cullum Davis Institute for International Studies at the Heritage Foundation, author of books including Wiki at War and Private Sector Public Wars. Jim, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good to be with you.
So what about that, your interpretation of those local election results in Hong Kong?
Well, I don't think they're terribly surprising.
No.
The people of Hong Kong have been pretty vociferous. And what started this whole thing is they took the promise of one country, two systems. This was the promise that was made, it wasn't a promise, it was a law that was passed when the British gave Hong Kong back to China.
Autonomous till 2047.
Right, which basically said that the people of Hong Kong could keep their political and economic systems. China would be responsible for overall foreign policy. So the results of the elections aren't what's surprising. It really puts the Chinese in a dilemma. And I kind of put the trade deal off to the side because the Chinese need the trade deal as much, if more than we do. And so getting involved in a deep linkage between Hong Kong and China would be a huge tactical mistake for them. I think what they have to keep their eye on is two things. One is the Chinese are never going to allow anything that makes it appear as if China is coming apart. I mean, this is counter to their strategic culture and narrative that those kind of threats are unacceptable, and they will do a Tiananmen Square in 5 minutes if they think that that is in peril. But that's not what the people of Hong Kong are actually asking for. And I think we've clearly seen that what's going on in Hong Kong is not really a threat to the stability of China. But on the other hand, it is a disaster for China's image around the world. It makes them look feckless. It makes them look underhanded. It destroys the whole narrative that China's influence in the world is benign. People can do what they want. The Chinese are just interested in making money. And so their reputation is being severely undermined by this. And I think they've got to keep an eye on that as they decide on their path forward.
But if it would be a tactical mistake for the Chinese to link the trade deal to any American position on Hong Kong, then wouldn't it be a tactical mistake for President Trump to be concerned about that same linkage? Do what you should do in support of Hong Kong pro-democracy forces because Xi is going to make a cold-blooded decision on any trade deal regardless of the American position on Hong Kong.
I believe that's correct. Look, the bill's completely veto-proof. If the president either vetoed it or Paco vetoed it, it would just be, I think, a needless step. It wouldn't placate the Chinese at all. And I think it confuse people as to what the U.S. position is. Where the U.S. and even the president's been very consistently clear that we support the people of Hong Kong, and one country, two systems. You know, Hong Kong is the literal canary in the mine shaft. That if the Chinese get away with this in Hong Kong, where are they going to stop? And so if the world doesn't stand up and say we are watching you, you are essentially enabling Chinese autocratic behavior around the world.
You had mentioned that it's worse for China than it is for us with this trade war. In what way? How so?
Well, I mean, their economy is slowing. They need U.S. imports in a whole variety of areas. And if you want to keep China together, much more important than what these guys in Hong Kong are doing is how the people of China feel about their country and their economy. Are their basic needs being met? Can they buy what they need to buy? Are they getting jobs? China has to be concerned about continued economic growth.
I wanted to switch gears. The dumping of Navy Secretary Richard Spencer. Did the president have any other choice after Spencer essentially flouted his clemency decision on the Navy SEAL in question here?
Yeah, I have to be honest. I don't have a lot to offer here because I haven't been following it super closely. The president is the commander in chief. People serve at the leisure of the president, and they're required to support his policies if they are lawful. Then you have an obligation as an employee of the president to support them, whether you are a cabinet secretary or some lieutenant colonel on the National Security Council.
Well, talk a little bit about what your impression is as to the culture in the Pentagon at present, because the Secretary of the Navy basically saying, well, I know the president granted this Navy SEAL clemency, but I'm going to move forward with the disciplinary proceeding anyway. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Secretary, that's not the way it works, but there seems to be a lot of Pentagon officials, intelligence officers that think it is the way it works under this president.
Well, I will say my one impression is that Mark Esper is the Secretary of Defense, and Mark Esper is in charge.
Yeah, clearly.
And I don't think there's any. If anybody has a doubt about that, then just cross him. I mean, this isn't the only episode where I've seen Esper come down and say, "Look, I'm in charge here."
Okay.
Yeah, and Trump. And Trump has openly criticized the Navy's handling of Gallagher's case and said that he'd not let the Navy discipline him. So
thus the clemency grant, right?
Yeah, and look, like I said, I have to be honest, I haven't been following the case super closely. I'm a huge fan of the system of uniform military justice, but that system has linkages and checks and balances that do go all the way up to the president. And I like much of the criticism. I think it's highly politicized. Everybody was thrilled with the interventions of President Obama. Because they supported him, and they hate the interventions of President Trump because they don't support him. Well, that's not the best legal analysis.
I wanted to move to the Middle East and Israel. Yet last week, Benjamin Netanyahu became the first Israeli prime minister to be indicted while in office, and this against the backdrop of Benny Gantz being unable to form a government. So you still sort of have the leadership of Israel in flux. We're going to see another election here. What's the future for Bibi? Will he step aside and allow another Likud party member to fill that slot? How is this playing out, and how destabilizing is Bibi's indictment in the region and for us as an ally?
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's terribly destabilizing. We've seen Israel take some very effective action even in recent weeks against the Islamic Jihad. So the Israelis will defend themselves. I don't doubt about that. There's an enormous amount of politics in the Israeli system. There's even less effective checks and balances than there are in the U.S. system. All that's playing out. The timing of the indictments perfectly matched up with an attempt to essentially have an internal coup within the Likud to remove Netanyahu. So much like in the U.S., you have a tremendous admixture of politics and legal proceedings going on. Very difficult to sort all that out. I think in the larger strategic picture, doesn't have much of an impact.
Really? How do you see the formation of the next government coming into focus?
Look, Bibi still might have a future.
Even under indictment, that's interesting.
Oh, yeah, well, I think they would say the indictments are partisan and it's a political hit job, and then when would that trial actually happen? That trial might not happen for years, and the people will get to vote if they want the guy back or not. All right. It's not like the people of Israel don't know about this issue because it's been out there forever.
No, right.
Yeah. So I think because of the security, we might actually see the government swing back his way because people fundamentally are concerned about security at the end of the day.
Well,
and what's going on,
and the parallels too. I mean, the Bibi is sounding like Trump, and Trump is sounding like Bibi. One's going through a political proceeding, but they're both talking about a coup, internal coups.
Right. I mean, and there are some, I think, well, and but there are different situations, and I think we have to treat them differently. And but clearly, I mean, if you ask the Netanyahu people, this is a completely politically motivated thing, and there's evidence for that. I mean, it's not like a clear case. Well, they're just making that up. There's lots of evidence to suggest that whether the charges, I don't know the charges. I'm not in Israel, but clearly there's enough evidence to suggest that people are playing politics with the issue.
Maybe that's where Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff got the idea to go with bribery, because that's one of the charges for which Bibi was indicted.
I don't know, but I think in this case, if somebody put a gun to my head and forced me to make a prediction, I think people look at the security situation today, they look at the uncertainty, and you might actually have people turn back to Netanyahu. We'll see.
Well, nobody's going to put a gun to Lieutenant Colonel Jim Carafano's head, that's for sure. Vice President of the Catherine and Shelby Cullum Davis Institute for International Studies at the Heritage Foundation. Jim, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Balance of Nature. Changing the world, one life at a time.
In April of 2017, I got the flu, and I had heard your commercials on the radio for a long time, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to try them. So I ordered them, and in May of 2017, I started them, and I have not been sick once. People at work were getting sick, my husband was getting sick, and I was not getting sick. Everyone I talked to at Balance of Nature is so kind and nice. It's a really good experience all the way around. I'll take this till my last breath.
Experience the Balance of Nature difference for yourself. From now until the end of the week, Balance of Nature is offering